So I want you to take a second and imagine the person you love the most in the entire world.
Okay, yeah.
It could be your child, your partner, maybe a best friend. Now, consider the possibility that the deep, warm affection you feel for them isn't actually the peak of the human experience.
Which is pretty much what we're all taught, right?
Exactly. But what if, instead, it's a highly evolved, inescapable trap, like one that's designed to slowly torture you, strip away your sanity, and ultimately serve you up as livestock?
Wow. I mean, that is a massive, unsettling paradigm shift.
It really is. And that's exactly what we are exploring in today's deep dive. We're looking at a translated piece of philosophical, spiritual writing from September 2020.
By an author named Xue Feng.
Right. It's titled Escape the Array of Affection. And the core argument here is that the very bonds that give our lives meaning are actually lethal snares that we have to break if we want to survive.
Oh.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it, because it really requires completely dismantling how we view human motivation. I mean, almost every culture, religion, and biological imperative tells us that connection is the goal.
Yeah, we're hardwired for it.
Totally. So to reframe affection as an existential threat, an array that ensnares us, it forces this radical reevaluation of what it means to be happy, or even just be human.
Right, so let's unpack the mechanics of this. To understand how affection weaponizes itself against us, we have to look at how Xue Feng defines the trap. The material introduces this concept of 36 arrays.
Right, and an array here isn't just a physical snare.
Right, it operates more like a reality distortion field or a complex psychological matrix designed to keep you locked in. And of all 36, the array of affection is deemed the absolute most difficult to escape. But what makes the argument so compelling to me is that it doesn't start out with all this doom and gloom.
No, it actually paints a stunningly beautiful picture of what affection does for the world.
Yeah, really does.
The author acknowledges the allure of the trap, you know. Affection is initially described as the rainbow of life. There's this cosmic, harmonious balance presented, like when the sky has affection, we experience favorable weather.
Right.
When the earth has affection, crops grow abundantly. Human affection creates warmth and auspiciousness. Even the lushness of a spring forest is attributed to the presence of affection. It's literally the lifeblood of existence.
Which brings us to a really grounded analogy the text uses to explain this balance. It says affection is like salt in food.
That culinary analogy is brilliant because it perfectly illustrates the dose-response relationship of human emotions.
Yeah, how so?
Well, think about how salt operates chemically. A small amount enhances the natural flavors of a dish, drawing out the subtleties. Without it, the food is bland, almost lifeless.
Right, nobody wants unsalted food.
Exactly.
No.
But if you accidentally pour like a quarter cup of salt into your soup, it doesn't just taste bad, it becomes biologically toxic.
It ruins it completely.
Right, it triggers a gag reflex, it ruins the dish entirely.
And the philosophy acknowledges that baseline requirement. It explicitly warns that completely lacking affection makes a person worse than a beast. So you have to have that pinch of salt to be fully human.
Yes, the baseline is necessary. The danger lies entirely in the dosage. The philosophy argues that affection is incredibly volatile.
Like it can turn on you.
Exactly. When it crosses a certain threshold, when it shifts from a pleasant seasoning to a dominant, driving need, it fundamentally alters a person's nature. They become, in the author's words, poisoned.
And that's where the argument takes a very sharp, dark turn. I mean, we go from keep your life balanced to this terrifying description of people just losing their minds.
Yeah, it escalates quickly.
The source claims that once poisoned by excess affection, people become hysterical, unreasonable, perverted even. There's a specific haunting phrase used here. It says they start acting like neither humans nor ghosts.
Neither humans nor ghosts. That phrase captures the limbo state of obsession perfectly.
It's so creepy.
It implies a complete loss of agency and identity. You are no longer a fully functioning human because your entire existence is subjugated by your emotional attachment to someone else. Yeah. But you aren't a ghost either because you're still anchored to the physical world, suffering real visceral pain. You basically become a hollow vessel for the relationship.
The affection just consumes you.
Exactly, and you lose the ability to reason.
And because that affection mutates from a spice into a poison, the metaphor shifts completely. We leave the kitchen and move into a much more predatory landscape. Affection is no longer salt. It's a literal net.
The visual is so stark. We're asked to imagine standing high up in heaven, looking down at the human world.
Okay.
And from that elevated vantage point, humanity doesn't look like an advanced civilization. It looks like a massive, thrashing school of fish entirely trapped in nets.
Wow.
And the material weaving these nets together isn't twine, it's our personal relationships, our loyalties, our loves, our familial obligations.
So the implication is that we're swimming into these nets voluntarily. We spend our entire lives weaving the very things that trap us. And this isn't a catch-and-release situation, is it?
Far from it. Failing to escape the net has dire consequences. The text states that those who remain trapped are eventually yanked out of the water to become a delicacy on the devil's dining table.
Oh man, the devil's dining table. That is a terrifying image. Being consumed by the very thing you thought was giving you life.
It's incredibly grim.
It is. And the author actually provides a fascinating psychological test for you, the listener, to prove this invisible net exists. The instruction is to lie in bed at night, in the quiet, and just take inventory of your mood. Ask yourself what genuinely torments you, what depresses you. What situation do you desperately want to end but find yourself paralyzed to change?
It forces a really uncomfortable confrontation with the root causes of our anxiety.
Right, and the conclusion is that the answer is invariably affection. When we lie awake at 3 a.m., we might think we're stressed about like a mortgage rate or an impending deadline at work.
Sure, the surface level stuff.
Exactly. But if you peel back the layers, the core torment is usually relational. It's a parent's expectations, a child's struggles, a collapsing marriage, a toxic friendship. The human ties are what actually keep us awake.
And the author actually categorizes these specific ties, ranking them by how fiercely they grip us. And at the absolute top of the hierarchy, the most difficult net to escape is the bond between parents and children.
Which makes perfect evolutionary sense, right? Biology practically hardwires us to sacrifice ourselves for our offspring and seek the approval of our parents. So why does the philosophy view this natural imperative as the ultimate snare?
Because trying to sever it directly attacks our conception of what it means to be good. To walk away from the affection of your parents or children induces an overwhelming psychological backlash.
We'd feel terrible.
You feel like a monster. Society relies on this bond to function, so leaving it violates every biological, societal, and moral code we possess.
Wow.
The net is so strong because it uses our deepest sense of morality as the actual locking mechanism.
That makes a lot of sense. So if the familial bond is rooted in biology and societal structure, the next net down the line seems rooted in contractual and daily friction. The net of couples?
Right, the couples net. This one is complex because it often involves the sunk cost fallacy. The author points out a modern trend where people are increasingly choosing to stay single or get divorced, which is essentially a way of dodging or escaping this specific net.
Yeah, just opting out entirely.
Exactly. But for the vast majority who stay in miserable partnerships, they're trapped by entanglement. Their finances, their social circles, their daily habits are all woven together.
They're just totally enmeshed.
Yes, and they want to escape the suffering, but the sheer logistical and emotional difficulty of disentangling their lives keeps them paralyzed in the net.
They just learn to tolerate the pain of the net rather than face the terror of cutting it. But then we arrive at the third net, which operates on entirely different fuel. It's not about biology or shared bank accounts. It's raw, chaotic emotion. The lover's net.
Oh, this is the most dramatically destructive snare of all. The text portrays romantic love not as a beautiful union, but as a space where people gladly hurl themselves into the fire. The language becomes incredibly visceral here.
It gets intense.
It really does. It describes individuals willing to risk their lives, descend into hell, and have their heads broken, bleeding, and their quote-unquote livers and gallbladders smashed.
Smashed livers and gallbladders. I mean, that is a brilliantly grotesque way to describe the agony of a toxic romance.
Yeah.
It completely strips away the glossy Hollywood veneer of love.
It does.
Because we culturally glorify this exact behavior, right? We romanticize the Romeo and Juliet narrative, sacrificing everything, even your life, for love. But this philosophy looks at that self-destruction and says, look at these poor fish fighting for a spot on the devil's dining table.
Exactly. It frames our highest romantic ideals as profound tragedies. The author uses the metaphor of moths flying desperately into flames. In The Lover's Net, life's joys and sorrows play out like raging fires that move the earth and frighten heaven. People become completely consumed by the melodrama, entirely unwilling to escape, even as the relationship actively destroys their mental and physical health.
So if these nets are woven from our biology, our societal structures, and our deepest psychological addictions, getting out seems impossible. Like a moth can't just decide to stop liking the light. We can't just logic our way out of our own evolutionary programming.
And the philosophy agrees completely with that assessment. It explicitly states that relying solely on your own willpower to escape the array of affection is futile.
Really? So you can't just tough it out?
No, you're essentially trying to lift yourself off the ground by pulling on your own shoelaces. Trying to navigate out blindly using only human logic offers very little chance of success.
Which means you need outside leverage. You need a force stronger than human biology and psychology combined.
Precisely.
And the author insists on needing absolute divine backup, introducing this concept of the roadmap of the guide.
Right. To break free from a trap this profound, you must rely on the power of ultimate authority. The text specifically calls out the necessity of guidance from gods, saints, and celestials. And it synthesizes major spiritual traditions, citing the combined divine powers of Jesus Christ and Buddha Shakyamuni.
Combining Jesus and Buddha is a massive spiritual flex.
It really is.
It underscores the sheer gravity of what you're up against. You need the ultimate symbols of salvation and non-attachment pulling together to break the gravitational pull of human affection.
Yeah, that's exactly the idea.
But having a divine roadmap isn't just about praying in your living room and feeling more detached. The material proposes a highly specific, physical, and frankly radical, real-world solution.
The ultimate escape route detailed in the text requires you to become a Chanyuan celestial and physically relocate to something called the New Oasis for Life.
Okay, stop right there. Moving to an isolated oasis and taking on a new title sounds incredibly alarming. From a modern psychological perspective, this is textbook isolation.
Yeah.
What are the actual mechanics of living in this oasis? Like, how does someone function there?
Well, the foundational, non-negotiable rule of this new existence is the complete prohibition of establishing any special relationships.
None.
None. You cannot have a favorite person, you cannot prioritize one individual over another, and romantic relationships with the opposite sex are strictly forbidden.
That is a massive red flag. You're basically stripping away the anchor points of human reality. No best friends, no romantic partners. How does a person navigate a community without forming specific attachments? It sounds like a psychological void.
I mean, from an external conventional viewpoint, it absolutely sounds like a void. But within the internal logic of this philosophy, it's framed as the ultimate frictionlessness.
Frictionlessness, okay?
Yeah, the mechanism at play here is interacting only through predestined relationships. This means you associate with others purely based on the present moment.
Oh, I see.
You take advantage of opportunities as they naturally arise. You act in accordance with your nature, and when the moment passes, you let the connection dissolve completely. You replace the heavy binding chains of affection with a state of being completely free and unfettered.
So assuming someone can actually override their human nature, sever all their ties, avoid forming new ones, and live in this completely frictionless state, what is the psychological payoff?
The author leans heavily on the natural world to explain what this freedom feels like, using some incredibly vivid animal metaphors.
Yeah, these were wild.
They're designed to convey a profound, visceral sense of relief. Escaping the array of affection is likened to a frog that has been trapped at the bottom of a dark, narrow well, finally crawling out into a vast, open pond.
Right.
It feels like a wild horse, previously bogged down in thick silt, suddenly finding its footing and returning to the wide prairie. Or a bird escaping a cramped cage and flying into a boundless forest.
You can really feel the sudden expansion of space in those images, going from muddy, dark claustrophobia to open air. But then there's the final metaphor, which is arguably the most provocative of all. The author says it feels like a pig jumping out of a pig pen and becoming human.
That specific metaphor ties the entire philosophy together. To be a pig in a pen is to be livestock. The pig doesn't know it's being fattened for the slaughter, right? It only knows that it's being fed.
Wow.
In this context, our affections, the love, the drama, the highs and lows are the feed. They keep us docile and distracted in the pen while we wait for the devil's dining table.
That is so dark.
By shedding these attachments, you aren't just changing your location, you're elevating your fundamental nature. You transcend from being livestock to becoming a higher awakened being.
You stop being the meal.
Exactly.
And once you reach that higher state, the author uses this beautiful Zen-like poetry to describe how you interact with the world. You become like bamboo in the wind.
Right. Consider how bamboo reacts to a storm. When the wind blows fiercely through a scattered clump of bamboo, it makes a loud swishing sound. The bamboo engages fully with the wind in that moment.
It's present.
Yes. But the instant the wind passes, no sound is left behind. Absolute silence reigns again. The bamboo doesn't hold on to the winds, it doesn't try to capture it or mourn its passing.
And there's another image used about geese flying over a winter pond. When the geese fly overhead, you can see their reflections perfectly clear on the surface of the water. But the second they fly past, the reflection vanishes.
It just disappears.
Right, the water doesn't retain the image.
Yeah.
You're instructed to live exactly like that pond. You fix your eyes entirely on the celestial islands of the Elysium world, your ultimate spiritual destination, and you move forward, trekking and climbing, without leaving a shadow.
To leave no shadow is the ultimate goal of this detachment. It means you can engage with the world, you hear the wind, you reflect the geese, but you retain absolutely nothing of it.
So no baggage whatsoever.
Exactly. It requires a profound psychological shift from "I need this person to complete me" to "I am merely observing this interaction as it passes." You do not mourn the clouds that drift by.
It's essentially like hiking through the most breathtaking mountain range in the world. But you operate under a strict set of rules. You're forbidden from pitching a tent, taking a photograph, or claiming a favorite spot to watch the sunset.
Right.
You just observe the beauty, acknowledge it, and keep walking.
Yeah.
You refuse to let the scenery impede your forward momentum.
It is a complete and total dismantling of what the vast majority of us consider the foundation of a meaningful life. The philosophy replaces the deep, messy roots of human connection with a state of absolute, unburdened observation.
It really challenges everything.
It challenges the very core of what we value by suggesting our deepest loves are our biggest liabilities.
Which brings us to the practical application for you listening right now. You probably aren't going to pack your bags and move to a new oasis for life to become a Chanyuan celestial today.
Probably not.
But Zhifeng's nighttime test remains a genuinely powerful psychological audit. As you lie in bed tonight, think about the relationships that dominate your mental energy, the people you pour your stress, your worry, and your deepest devotions into. Are they actually nourishing you? Or are they a net pulling you under?
That's the real question.
Are they the pinch of salt that makes your life flavorful? Or have they become the poison making you hysterical?
It forces a highly uncomfortable inventory of our emotional investments. It demands we confront a difficult question. How much of our daily suffering is entirely self-inflicted through the people we simply refuse to let go of?
It's a heavy question, and it leaves us with one final provocative thought to ponder. The philosophy insists that completely abandoning your affections elevates you. It makes you like the bird escaping the cage, or the pig finally evolving into a human.
That's the promise.
But if you successfully sever every single tie that makes you care, if you never pitch that tent or take that photo, do you truly become free? Or do you just become the empty pond after the geese have flown away, perfectly peaceful, perfectly pristine, but entirely alone?